Welcome back to another episode of the Small Business Big Deal podcast. I am super, super excited about this episode. It combines two of my favorite things, golf and business. And I am very, very excited to welcome Katy Winters to the show. Katy, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. So my husband and I started a golf brand about 2 years ago. It's called 3570 Golf Co. We make golf apparel and accessories and showcase golf courses kind of all throughout the U.S., but mainly focused on the Midwestern United States, and particularly in small towns. We were both lifelong golfers and kind of had a passion to run a golf business together, and kind of through a slew of events that I think we'll probably talk about here at some point, we decided to start a golf brand together.
That's fantastic. Well, we're definitely going to dig into the starting a business with your spouse because there's so much loaded into itself. But I want to start out with the name of your company. So 35 by 70, it's super clever. It's obviously rooted in Kansas geography. What really inspired you guys to choose that as the name?
Yeah, so my husband and I both played high school golf in kind of relatively small towns, and he actually went to high school in Iowa. I played at Andover High School in Andover, Kansas, right outside Wichita. But when we were both in high school, the schools that we played against some of the smaller schools around the state. And so we would always travel to really small towns to go play like regionals and state championships. So, I mean, places like Fredonia, Kansas, small towns throughout Iowa, places like that. And so kind of those travels really inspire a lot of the stories behind the brand. And so first and foremost, 35 and 70 are great golf scores, 35 on 9 holes, 70 on 18 holes. But ultimately, I-35 and I-70 for us are kind of the gateway to golf throughout the Midwest and really throughout the country.
I love that. I think it's so clever. And again, I think being able to tie in the golf scores to it, I would love to shoot those scores. But I would love to one day, and maybe it will be possible. Golf is such a traditional sport. I mean, it's steeped in tradition, and fashion has really evolved. And a few episodes ago, we had on Golf Angel, and she really talked about how her brand was trying to evolve women's golf apparel. How are you guys trying to bring that tradition, but yet fashionable pieces into the golf environment?
Yeah, so one night, a couple summers ago, my husband, Dan, had said, "Hey, I need some new polos." And I was like, okay, let's get online. Let's go look at some of his favorite brands. But everything had palm trees or just like martini glasses all over it. It was very beachy type of feel. And I said, man, somebody should make Midwest golf polos. Like, I just want a polo for you that has like wheat stalks all over it. Same kind of design, but just wheat stalks or corn cobs or, things that really feel like home. And so for us, that's what we're trying to do, is kind of bring out these Midwest inspired things into golf polos and still keep a classic design so that it's not kind of the loud, bold, like bro golf lifestyle or bro golf style, but, kind of create these very classic designs, but things that are inspired by us as Midwesterners.
I don't know if I like thinking about fashion. I don't know how many brands that I can name, and I'm sitting here kind of racking my brain, and I'm not sure I can even come up with one that actually does have Midwestern elements that inspire it. So I do think that you obviously have a significant niche, and it's not just Kansas. Obviously, there are many states around us that look and feel the same. And that definitely don't have a palm tree anywhere near them.
Yes. Yep. Definitely.
And for him, I'm just kind of talking about the brands and the designs because I love your designs, and we'll share a couple of links to your guys' site so that way people can see these as well and through your Instagram. But for these, like, there are some really loud golf brands out there. There's some just wild and crazy patterns. So for you guys, are you trying to appeal to the individuals who also love that, or is it really classic, traditional type of apparel?
We want to go a little bit more classic, traditional stuff that you would find in your local pro shop. My husband spent the first 10 years of his career working at golf courses. So that's a big part of the business plan for us. Yeah, so we're definitely working more towards kind of the traditional. It's kind of our fun twist on traditional golf apparel. So some fun patterns, things kind of hidden within the patterns, but not so much the loud golf apparel. We want something that, you could wear to the office, something that you could wear to the golf course, even something that you would wear out for dinner kind of thing that you might find at your local country club or could find it at your local public golf course. So just kind of all around good stuff.
I love it. Starting a clothing brand is no small feat, especially in a really saturated space. Like you said, there's a million golf brands out there. They all have their own look and feel to them. What was the hardest part of getting this from idea launch?
So that same night that we said, man, somebody should make Midwest polos, a little bit later, we kind of said, well, we know just enough about product development. Why don't we look at it? And we had kind of talked about getting into apparel before, and it had always said like, nah, that just seems like a lot. The sizing, the cuts. I mean, there's, returns. There's just a lot to deal with there. The idea came up at just the right night. And so started researching different manufacturers and suppliers and where some of our favorite brands were getting their products from, and sent off an email to a supplier in South Korea and thought they're never going to respond to us, but what the heck? The worst they can do is say no. And sure enough, a few days later, we were on a Zoom call at 4:00 in the morning with them, talking about the process of how to make apparel. And it's hard to say what exactly the hardest part has been, because we had so little experience that we had no expectations whatsoever. I mean, my expectation was that we were never going to find somebody to work with us. And we've been super fortunate because, we were on that first call and they said, oh yeah, we need your designs in an AI file, and we need your tech packs and your specs and this, that, and the other. And I was like, what's a tech pack? It's literally just a breakdown of here's each measurement for each cut that goes together to make the piece of clothing. They were incredible. They walked us through that whole process. I think probably the hardest part has just been that learning curve to this point of like, it's not quite as simple as you just throw a shirt down on a table, grab a measuring tape, measure it, and okay, the chest should be 22 inches wide. It's not that simple because there's, the angles of the shoulders, and especially on women's gear, like the angles of like the waist cuts and that kind of thing.
Oh yes.
And
Which
so that's been
companies
hard
get
at
wrong.
times. But yeah, we've been learning on the fly for 2 years here. So it's been a lot of fun.
So you're telling me you didn't go to school for apparel design, and that's
Nope.
not what your original careers were. So what were you doing before you started this company?
Yep. So I have an
And
accounting.
maybe you're still doing it. Yeah.
So I have an accounting and finance degree from KU, and my husband has a marketing degree, although he's spent his entire career in the golf business. He was an assistant golf pro for several years and has worked in fitting and teaching at a kind of specialty club shop for almost the last 10 years now. And so his career has been everything golf. But I worked for Koch Industries here in Wichita for 12 years in a variety of accounting, finance, and IT roles. And that experience couldn't be farther from what we're doing now. So I always loved finance, loved numbers, that kind of thing. And so kind of started out through, kind of your traditional accounting roles in a corporate setting, and then moved into some more finance type roles. And then ultimately was actually in an IT role. I'm doing kind of finance and accounting system work. That was my last position there. So it's a very, very different background.
And like we were kind of talking about before we actually pressed record, which sometimes I feel like is some of like the best conversations too. But before we started this, we were talking about how, you did start out in a non-traditional, you were definitely weren't in the clothing industry. How did that role though, and how did that finance and accounting background help in this transition of getting this business up and going? Because definitely one of the things that I see the most often with business owners is that their numbers are a mess and they don't really have a plan or a budget or anything of this nature. And I have to think, and I really want to hope deep in my heart that as a numbers person, that you definitely have some sort of semblance of what's going on financially in the company. And tell me a little bit about how you can connect those.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the kind of longtime famous accounting professors at KU used to start off every semester and say, if you can't keep score in baseball, you'll never know who won. And so it's the same thing in business, right? And so we have been really fortunate. I do our books and everything from the cash flow management to just day-to-day operations to putting together financials to doing our taxes. And so that experience and seeing it, in a very large corporate setting at Koch and then, applying some learnings from that to, obviously we're on a drastically smaller scale, but it's critical. Like one thing that has been kind of an interesting challenge to work through this year in particular is, last year we brought our first line of polos in, and we sold enough to restock some of the more popular designs. And, last year it was just every time we turned around, we just need more. We need more inventory. We've had enough cash flow coming in that we just need more. And this year, all of a sudden, it has turned into, okay, we have a nice base of inventory kind of across the board. And so it's not just order. It's kind of managing more of that cash flow and being strategic about where we're adding, really kind of analyzing what our inventory looks like. We have, a good years of sales data under our belt to think about sizing and how to order certain sizes. Like there are literally never enough larges. There could not be enough larges to not sell out at some point in time. It is by far and away the most popular size. And so I spent a lot of the back half of my career in data mining and data analysis. We use the Shopify platform for our point of sale and our website hosting, and all that. And they have a really nice analytics system on the back of that. And so I have pretty well spent the last 2 or 3 months knee deep in how do we take all this data from the last year and now apply it to some forecasting. And the tariffs have thrown a unique challenge into that as well. Our stuff comes from South Korea, so and we get a few things from China, so that's been something to take into account too. But like we just leased an office building for the next year. We have yet to actually pay ourselves out of the business and would like to start doing that at some point. So really starting to think about, what does the baseline need to look like for how many shirts do we need to sell? What do the margins need to look like? How many of even just specific like color, sizes, things like that do we need to order to meet customer needs, and what's going to give us like the best inventory turnover rates and that kind of thing. So it's been really fun to take it from we just have this creative idea to learning how to use the tools to actually get the designs on paper, design a shirt, and have it here in real life to like, okay, now how do we take this thing from we got it started to how do we turn it into a more established, mature business and ultimately be able to grow and hire people and that kind of thing.
I love it. And I love that you really are digging into the analytics and looking into what products are selling. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from brand owners that just, shoot from the hip and hope for the best. And it's not successful. It's not sustainable. And it does really sound like you guys are trying to grow this for the long haul and not just because it sounded fun one night when looking for shirts. Like, I mean, I know that's how a lot of businesses start. That's certainly how a couple of mine have popped up, but you really are making sure that this is sustainable. And I love that you guys are talking about paying yourselves, because if anybody listens to any of my shows or any of my content, it is definitely pay yourself first and make sure that the business is actually serving you and that you're not just serving your business.
Yeah, it was funny. I'll tell you one quick funny story. That night back in the kitchen, said somebody should make Midwest golf polos. So we kind of got down the path of talking about it. What would you put on a polo? And found the supplier to contact and, sent off an email. And I remember saying to Dan, what's the worst that's going to happen? They don't respond. And we both kind of shrugged. And I kind of said, well, maybe the worst thing that happens is we start an apparel brand. And here we are. So it's the best problem to have. It's not something I think either one of us expected to be doing. We had expected that at some point he would get a head golf professional position and we would be buying a pro shop at a club. And, I would be doing all the merchandising for him, running the books and that kind of thing. Because that is what I'm good at. I'm the CFO of the household, and he is really good with people. So it makes a great pair. I often joke that when I was growing up, my dad paid all the bills and stuff. And so when we first got married, I sort of thought like, okay, that's going to be his job. And after a couple months of being newlyweds and like, hey, you got to pay the phone bill, man. I kind of realized like, I'm good at this. He's not. Like, mm-hmm. I'll take this on. It's kind of one of those funny moments in that first year of marriage of like, okay, this is going to be my role and, I'll take care of that and that's all good. So It's been funny.
No, and that definitely is. I mean, that's definitely how marriage works. You get into a groove, and it's like the person who, one, is good at it, or two, will take responsibility for it even if they're not good at it, is the one that's going to step up to the plate and take care of that. There was definitely those types of role discussions, in my marriage, and I was also the one that paid the bills. So no surprise
Yep.
there. I
Yep.
think those of us who live in that finance world, that's just kind of what we take over. But how
Yes.
has that translated into working together? So there's a very big difference between being newly married and newly business partnered. It feels a little bit the same, but now the stakes are different and it's a completely different dynamic between the two of you. And I really want to talk about this because there's a lot of business owners or a lot of people who want to go into business with their spouse. I personally can't fathom it. It would never have been great for me. But would love to know how it's working for you guys and how you kind of determine what those roles are. And kind of a follow up question, how does that translate or how do you turn it off and go back into marriage mode?
Yep. Um, so I would say even from the earliest days of dating, we had always talked about running a golf shop together. And so, we were having conversations just over the love of merchandising and golf apparel and golf accessories from a really early day. So, or from a really early time in our relationship. And so from that standpoint, it's been a fairly transition, especially because Dan has worked in golf our entire relationship, his entire career. We both grew up at golf courses and, we're around the golf course, around the pro shop, those kinds of things all the time. And so it's just been it's always been a big part of our lives. And so to your point about how do you turn it off, when you marry a golf pro, it doesn't really get turned off. You figure that out pretty quickly. They're a special breed. I don't know that I've ever met anyone that loves golf as much as my husband does. It's, we're lucky that we both share that. He does not turn it off. It is just part of our life, and kind of touches everything. And that's cool. It works well for us. But so the transition into business ownership, we got started. I was on maternity leave with our youngest son. So we have two boys. They're 5.5 and 3. So I was on maternity leave. It was the spring of 2022. We had just gone through some pretty significant organizational changes in my job. So even to backtrack a little bit further, when we had our first son, I was on maternity leave, had some different business ideas, but I was like, I could not wait to get back to the normalcy of my day job. I really appreciated the structure of corporate life. We've talked about this. I'm the finance person in the family, so I appreciated the salary and kind of that smooth pay curve, if you will. And so I actually went back early from my first maternity leave to go work on an IT project. I was managing a team of about 9 people around the globe at the time. And I really loved the company that I worked for. I specifically worked for the commodity trading company at Coke and was really loved the business, enjoyed my job, and enjoyed doing it. And so we had our first son. He went to daycare. I mean, everything was good. It was like, okay, I've watched lots of gals come up that are a few years ahead of me, get married, have kids, send their kids to daycare. This is just, and then come back to work. And that's just what you do. And my mom worked when I was growing up. And so it was all cool. And then our second son came around and it just hit different. There had been a lot of organizational changes in the couple years between when I went back from my first son and my second son. I had some opportunities that I had hoped to get to further my career that didn't come to fruition, and was kind of in a position that I didn't love and felt like I had kind of grown out of, but wanted to do something different. And boss I'd reported to for a long time had just left. I mean, there was a lot of stuff happening there. Just really felt a pull to be home more with the kids and be around more for the kids. And as I'm sure you can probably relate, you're like, man, you want to leave a corporate job to be an entrepreneur, to be home more? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I had people say that to me over and over and over. And I was like, no, I want to give it a shot. And so I have worked more hours in the last 2 years than I probably did in the previous 5. But there's just something about building something for yourself and building something for your family that is a totally different feel that you really can't explain. But so on that maternity leave, I had said to my husband, we could really tell a difference in our oldest son, me being around more and being able to be more relaxed around him, even with a newborn, in the throes of the life of taking care of a newborn. There was just something that was different in him. And I was like, I want more of this. I want more of this for us. And, like I said, we'd always had conversations about running a golf shop together. And so it started as like, hey, I have some ideas for these head covers. And so I had seen on Instagram a brand out of Florida that was making custom head covers with printed designs. So he came home one night and I was like, hey, I have this idea. And so we took some of the Wichita landmarks and had them printed on the back of a head cover, and then embroidered the Wichita flag on the front of the head cover. And then likewise for Kansas. So we had the Kansas, like the state outline, and then some elements about Kansas printed on the back. His first questions were, where the hell are we going to sell these? What do you mean? And, it kind of slowly but surely evolved into like, hey, I think I could see a situation for us that doesn't involve my job at Coke. And I mean, his first reaction was, you don't think you're ever actually going to leave there, do you? And I said, yes. And he said, do you really think we can do that? And I said, I don't know, but I'm ready to go broke trying. I would rather try and learn the hard way than look back and have never tried at all. And he said, okay. And that was kind of the end of it. I mean, he has been incredibly supportive since. For us personally, all of our health insurance benefits, all of our retirement benefits, everything we had was tied to my job at Coke. And so it was a big jump for our family. And so all those benefits that we had were tied to my job at Coke. His job doesn't offer health insurance. They don't offer a retirement match. And so it was crazy. I remember the first time that I kind of told my parents, hey, I seriously think I want to leave. I think my dad about fell over. He was a bankruptcy judge. We joke, I have no business being an entrepreneur because my dad was a bankruptcy judge. He spent his entire career, well, not entire career, but, significant part of his career practicing bankruptcy law. Our dinner table conversations weren't about my dad landed a sale and, here was the line that he sweet talked somebody to line a deal. They were about the things that he had seen in court that day, whether it was just some bad luck, something unfortunate happened to somebody and they lost their business because they couldn't operate it, or, whether it was somebody hadn't been paying their taxes and, ended up in that situation after a slew of bad decisions. I'm one of the last people who should be starting a business. And for a lot of those reasons, I very much valued the quote unquote security of a salary and a corporate position. And so it was crazy. It was crazy to make the jump and leave Coke to go build a golf brand. But Dan's been incredibly supportive from day one, and really grateful for that because, I think that if you're worried about the money when you start a business, and you have to be worried about it to some extent because that's what we're here to do, is make money. But if you're worried about it and worried about how it's going to affect your lifestyle and you're making decisions based on that, it's going to be really hard to be successful because at some point you kind of, especially those early years as you're building things up, you're building up a base of a community and a customer base, and, kind of being able to talk about what you're doing, that doesn't always immediately translate to sales. And so being able to have him be there and be supportive, and we had taken a good couple years to plan around it and save. And we had things happen in our house, that home expenses that were unexpected, things with the kids that were unexpected, stuff just happened that you really couldn't even plan for. I think if you're just working hard and focused on what you're building and you're able to kind of delay that gratification, I think good things can follow.
I think
that was a really long answer.
So much to unpack there, but I have to tell you, I got really emotional when you were talking about saying that you were going to be willing to leave your job in order to start a golf brand or anything really at that point, because that was the same feeling that I had when I decided to leave my full-time job to start my consulting company full-time. And there is nothing inside of me that could get me to go back working for someone else once I've had the experience of working on my own. And the entire commentary that you had around if you're worried about money or you're worried about how money is going to come into your life or anything, this is probably not a role for you. Entrepreneurship is probably not something that you're going to be good at or that you're going to enjoy, because you're going to hold so much stress in your body during that, always being worried about where money is going to come from. And you seem to have the same spirit that I do, that like you're just going to figure it out. Like there's no part of me that feels like I'm going to go day to day and not just figure it out. Like there can be a series of events that happens and I could lose clients or, shift a direction. And then all of a sudden now my pricing has changed and money just looks different. But I'm always going to figure it out, because that is so much more inspiring and feels good to me versus ever going back and getting a paycheck from somebody else and building their dream instead of building my own.
Yes, totally. And what we've found is if you make space for it, good stuff will happen. And just meaning that you spent like getting ready to make that jump. We spent so much time focused on what if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? How long do we have? How long would it take me to find another job again? All these things. What if it goes wrong? But what if it goes right?
Yes.
What if you leave and then all of a sudden you start building this up and you make space for something to go right? And it's just kind of amazing how you can start to kind of build we've really taken the route of trying to build a personal brand online. Certainly Dan being in a golf shop day over day, he's got lots of clients and kind of has his own personal brand kind of built as well. But really just trying to focus on what if things can go right. And so where we'll have it's just amazing how many times we've gotten to kind of a slow point in the business, and it's really easy to kind of start to worry about oh man, it's gotten slow. I'm sure you've seen this. It's gotten slow and you're kind of okay, where do I need to try to drum up some sales? But if you just kind of pause and just stay focused on what you're doing and keep focused on the process, the next thing you know, the phone rings and it's somebody who wants a bulk order of 100 polos, or an email comes in and somebody wants to do custom head covers for something, or you make the space for kind of the next wave of things to happen. I think if you're working hard and you're where you're supposed to be, those things just have a way of coming through, whether you're expecting them or not. And we've just become big believers in that. I don't know how often you tie faith into your show or anything like that, but
absolutely,
it has given us a deeper level of faith than I could have ever imagined. Just because sometimes you're like, man, what I don't know where the next thing's coming from, and then all of a sudden it just comes through. Probably one of the biggest things that happened last year, and probably one of the most important one of the most important moments kind of on this topic, was I was probably about 6 or 8 weeks out from having left Coke. May 1st, 2024 was my last day. And so it was mid-June, and I was driving one day and things had gotten really slow. We had a really good push through March of polo sales, and then things kind of slowed down late spring. And I was like, man, we're only 6 to 8 weeks out. What? You really kind of thought that we had this one big push and then that would just be consistent for forever, right? And that's just not the way it works. And so I had been kind of poking around, looking at job boards, maybe I should get something part-time to just, give us some breathing room in the meantime. And I could work part-time in the mornings and do 35/70 stuff in the afternoon, or this, that, and the other. It was just spending a lot of time thinking through these scenarios. And I was sitting at a stoplight, and it's a stoplight that I sit at 2 to 3 times a day, and had kind of been thinking through some of that. And there was just a voice in my head all of a sudden that said, you're not going back. And it just said, this is your life now. Dig in. This is your life now. And so I like to say that when the fear of not trying outweighs the fear of failure, that's where you start to find some success. And that's where you start to find some momentum. You dig in and, from a competitive golf standpoint, we would speak to it as just stick into your process, stick into your practice routines, stick into your pre-shot routine, and you just got to trust that the good stuff's going to come.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was that sounds a lot like golf. Like, it sounds like, sticking to the little things. It's doing the small details, the things that that work, the breathing, the not being on your phone between holes, or, whatever those steps are that are consistent and make you better in your golf game are very similar. I don't know that the show talks a lot about faith or anything else. And I always say that I'm not like a woo person, but I am very much with you in that whether it's God or the universe or whatever anybody wants to believe in, I believe that the universe will always give us exactly what it is that we need. And I have found personally that I am more successful when I put space into my calendar and when I put space into what I'm doing. When I have a jam-packed calendar full of client calls or trying to do too much, things get jammed up, money doesn't come in, things feel really, really hard when I'm making it hard. But when
Yep.
I free up my time and I go to the golf course during the day and I make space for podcasting, even like this is inspirational. Like, I'm getting great ideas just sitting here speaking with you. But when I give myself space in my calendar or a day off to do anything else, like, those where my ideas come from. And like, that is when business feels easy. I was off kind of for about the last 2 weeks. I did a little bit of work, but not much. And I had a conference. And in that time where most companies could have really stalled out, we got 3 new clients during that time. When space happens and when I allow myself to breathe and self-care, and I'm sure like when you're taking time with your kids and you're spending time doing the things that are important to you and important to your family, that's when success starts to fall into place. And I fully believe that that's what we're supposed to be doing as entrepreneurs. It's not just grind. And I think that that whole like Gary Vee mentality and all of this like hustle culture is so toxic, because everybody I know who puts space and margin into their calendars finds more success.
I can't tell you how many times we've seen it happen, even in a year.
Mhm.
It's been just over a year, and I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah. But I got to know. So you guys have great, great polos. You've got super cute head covers, all of the things. So I kind of have a twofold question here.
Okay.
One, how do you guys test your products? I mean, like, are you sending these to work with your husband? There's like the guys, like people he's like training or doing whatever or playing with. Like, are they wearing these on the course and seeing how they fit and feel? Like, how are you guys testing this out? And what else is missing in the marketplace? I know as a female who plays a lot of golf and goes into a lot of pro shops and has a very, very disappointed look on my face when I can't spend the kind of money that I would like to spend inside of a pro shop. What do you think is missing in the market?
So I'll start with the first questions. To kind of at first, we took about a dozen of Dan's favorite polos from his closet and literally sat down and made a list. What do you like about this one? What do you hate about this one? And then conversely took his least favorites and said, what do you hate about these? And so we tried to put together, his favorite features, like the ones where the collars stayed straight or the ones that you could wear tucked or untucked, and incorporate that into our pattern. And then, it started with, he's been the best test subject. I'm biased, but I think he's a hell of a model. And so, that's handy to have built into the brand. But we both have a lot of experience with playing competitive golf and, just wearing polos on a day-to-day basis. And, he literally wears them every day and they get worn hard. I mean, he's building golf clubs. There's, like grip solvent and epoxy and all kinds of things involved. Back when he was working for a golf shop, I mean, he was inside, outside, all the elements. And so, he can pretty quickly tell a good golf shirt from a bad golf shirt. And so he's been a great test subject. And then, we've had some awesome customers that, I think one thing that I did not appreciate enough prior to starting a business are the people who give you an opportunity to like fill an exchange. So the people who get their shirt and say, hey, I love the pattern. I really want to support you guys. This just isn't quite right. Or, that I think one of the things that's coolest about running a small business has been kind of the relationship with those people, even if they've just come from like people we've met over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But that relationship with people who then send a message in and say, hey, I love this about your shirt. I don't love this. Or I love this about your hoodies. I don't love this. And kind of giving us an opportunity to change that and improve upon it, without just leaving a crappy review.
Yeah.
So,
Which is always helpful.
yeah. Yep. But you know, it's been a lot of
Feedback
trial by
feedback is
fire.
always welcomed from small businesses. Like we want as owners,
Yes.
we want feedback. We want constructive criticism. We want to know what people like and what people don't like. Because as we're building a community, like just because we love the thing, obviously we're putting it out into the world so we like it. But if somebody else wants it adjusted or thinks it should be different, like man, let the small business owner know that. Like you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. In fact, hearing nothing is actually way more offensive and difficult to move a business forward if you don't know what people think rather than if you do. Like, and that's the way that you build that community because now all of a sudden your customers feel seen. They say, wow,
Yes.
they listened to my feedback, they made the change. Like all of a sudden now they're invested as part of this brand because their impact or their decisions that they wanted to share made a difference. And it all of a sudden now feels like theirs. And what is going to happen? They're going to tell their friends. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, these people really listen. And it doesn't feel like this like corporate veil essentially of like, you know, who's behind the curtain and not to go all Kansas, like very Wizard of Oz kind of thing here, but like like there actually is a face and a human behind a brand. And it's not just this internet screen that you can't get past and nobody cares. Like there's really a
Right.
heart and soul behind your business. And that's so important. And I know that was kind of one thing that we talked about too, is that you just thought this was going to be a golf brand. You didn't realize that you were now going to become the face of a golf brand. Tell me how that kind of showed up for you and when you realized that you're really going to actually have to be forward facing in this rather than sort of just behind the numbers.
Yeah. So, I mean, my original, the very first thing I went to Dan with was I want to stay home with the kids and I'll run this thing and we'll pack orders during the day. And he said, you can run this thing, but you're not staying home with the kids. He knew me better than I did at that point. And so, but that was kind of the original thought process was like, how can we build something that, you know, we can run out of the house and have more time with the kids. And so we, you know, at this point we're very lucky that it's grown to where it's outside the house. And, I mean, that's been awesome. But yeah, I sort of anticipated that I would just be the person behind a camera, you know, talking about golf courses, you know, over like video pans of golf courses, not necessarily like inserting our personality into it as well. But so we started out, we launched the website and it was really slow at first. I mean, I kind of thought you just put stuff on a website and people would find it and people would buy it, right? Like people are searching
Build
for
it and they will
Wichita
come.
golf things, right? Exactly. And you know, especially like at work, you know, when I was a young, or I guess when I was a new hire at Coke, my dad would always tell me like, hey, you don't want them to ever think you're distracted. Like you want them to think that you're all in on them and that you're like a dedicated employee and that's how you're going to move up. And so I was always really hesitant to talk about 3570 as we were building it out. You know, on one hand, I'm sure you've been there, like you're kind of working through the kinks and you're building out the business. And, you know, there's an element of it where you are hands-on building it yourself and you're not necessarily talking about it. And then there comes to a phase that you are ready to kind of share it with the world. And even once we got to that point, like I was still, on one hand, I was very worried that they were going to be like, no, you can't do that. Or not even, no, you can't do that. But like, you know, you've already got 2 kids. Now you're trying this thing too. Like, what are we doing here? And so was worried about that. But then also like, I was just nervous about it, right? Like these were our designs, our ideas. We loved them, but I was like, what if we look stupid? Cause nobody else likes this stuff. And so I had to get over that very quickly. You know, one night things had been kind of slow. We hadn't really hadn't formally launched anything yet. Dan had been talking about it and he was kind of like, look, are we going to do this or not? Like what, you know, he was like, what are we doing here? You're scared to talk about this. If you're too scared to talk about it, well, what are we doing? And it was kind of in that moment that I was like, oh man, like I gotta start talking about this. And then there have been levels to it since. So, I mean, even once we launched the Instagram page and started posting about golf courses and talking about what we were doing, you know, at first it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is just like this side thing we're doing. I don't know what it's going to be. was still like just worried about that line of like, what does this look like for
like imposter syndrome, right? Like,
yeah.
you've now entered a space that, if we're honest, is a really critical space because one, everybody wants to look good on the course. Well, most people do. And it's a very saturated market with some huge names. I mean, you've got pros with their own lines. I mean, you've got Tiger Woods out here selling $300 sweatshirts or whatever it is that he's doing.
Yeah.
Like, you're in a space that this could have a lot of imposter syndrome because nobody's had Midwest gear. Nobody's had designs like the two of you have created. Like, this is so unique. It's almost like saying, hey, I just had a baby, but I don't really want to show it to anybody because God forbid they say it's ugly, right? Like, it's
Right.
your precious like creation. And that feeling of like, we know this is amazing, but what if other people don't? And it is that step, and it's that being able to push forward through that, kind of like your husband was really trying to get you to do, that does get you to jump into that entrepreneurial space feet first and hope for the best. There's just something about grit that entrepreneurs have to have, and you've obviously have had it in getting such a unique brand out into the world. But yeah, that imposter syndrome, what you're describing, that's what that is. Just going like, do I want to talk about it? Like, I know it's amazing, but if other people don't, like, but you're here and you have incredible products and the world is seeing them. Are people buying them outside of the Midwest? Have you gotten like, are we going to ever see people in California like wearing, corn stalks and all kinds of different things on their shirts? Like, where are these selling?
All over the place. So we've sent stuff, gosh, I don't know the latest count on every state, but we've gone as far as like Alaska to Europe.
That's amazing.
So it's been all over. And, to your point about the imposter syndrome, I think it just goes back to what always helps me get through it is like, you've always got to remember, like, the fear of not trying, if that outweighs the fear of failure, you just got to go. And from the point that we really started to put a lot of our personality into the business and into our posts and that kind of thing, that's where we've seen some growth really start to take off in terms of like, I think we're getting to the point now where people are like, oh, this is like a thing.
Yeah.
This isn't just your, little side hustle thing. This is a thing. And
yeah,
that certainly helps too.
It.
But yeah, we've sold over 2,000 polos, several hundred hoodies. We are in 5 golf shops around the country. The coolest golf shop. Well, so first off, Flint Hills National gave us an opportunity to get gear in the shop last year. So Dan and I both caddied there growing up. And we've been able to keep a good relationship with their head pros over the years. We've known those guys for 20 plus years, and we were really, really fortunate to get in there and really owe them a lot because that was a huge opportunity to have gear on the floor. And we got a lot of feedback very quickly from their members of, we like this, we don't like this. And so we've been able to apply that, and that's been great. And they've brought more gear in. We've done some custom stuff for them this year. So like one of the things we can do is fully custom polos. So we haven't talked about this, but we do all the design work in-house. I design all of our polos.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I went from lifelong spreadsheet warrior in Microsoft Excel to learning the Adobe suite of products from scratch to make these designs. And at first it was just out of necessity because we're a bootstrap business. We haven't put anything else into it other than what we've built within the business. And so, at first it was just out of necessity to keep costs lean. And now it's just kind of become passion of like learning Adobe after spending a lifetime in Microsoft is like learning a separate language at 33,
Completely.
33, 34,
yeah.
35. So it's been cool. But so we've done a custom line of polos for them this year. And so it's been really, really cool to see that grow and see some of the custom work grow. But one of our coolest stories has been we kind of over Twitter met a head golf pro at Anchorage Golf Course in Anchorage, Alaska. And so they did a wholesale order with us this year to bring gear into their shop. And then we custom designed 4 polos that we worked with them on this winter. And we'll be hopefully shipping those up to them this week, actually. But 4 totally custom designs that'll be specific to their golf shop. They're all kind of Alaska themed. There's one with northern lights, one with salmon, one that has kind of the state of Alaska sprinkled around it, kind of similar to our Kansas patterned polo. And then there's another one with moose that kind of look like moose out in the snow. So yeah,
That's amazing.
It's been super cool. it's been really cool.
All right. What's the next product that's coming out? Where's that? What's the gap in the market that you're going to fill?
Well, so we've got women's gear coming in June. So first women's
Yay,
polos
finally.
and quarter zips arrive in June. Yes. So we're starting with just a simple women's short sleeve polo.
Sleeves,
I
not
could talk
sleeveless, right? Like we actually can like
sleeved.
have
Yes.
sleeves finally on something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So personally, I'm a fan of just a good old ladies polo, like proper length sleeve, proper cut in the waist, not super long, not super short, just good, solid athletic polo. And it just shouldn't be that hard, right?
No, it shouldn't be that hard. And it shouldn't have to be ugly either. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know where these people's design teams are coming up with the idea that and respectfully, a lot of the older women are way better golfers than I will probably ever be. But like, I don't want to dress like them. This is not, I might be 43 years old, but I don't want to wear like old lady patterns. Like, it's not fun and it's all that is out there.
Yep. So we're trying to bring a similar style as what we've got on the men's side into the ladies' gear. So kind of a classic type pattern look, but not all flowers and butterflies and large martini glasses and this, that, and the other. So things that will be flattering, but also things that will be fun. There will be of the first launch of ladies' gear. There's a pattern that exactly matches one of the men's shirts for some family matching. There's one that is, and then the other two are kind of offset colors of some of our other men's designs. So there will be some opportunity to tie them together. But yeah, we're excited. I think the fit of the shirt will be good. Obviously, that's going to be a big deal. And that is like 10x harder than trying to make a good men's shirt. So we just wanted to be simple.
Ladies clothing has got to be way, way harder to design and make because there's no such thing as standard sizing in women and there's no such thing as a standard size woman. Like guys in general have a fairly similar shape. Women are completely different. So I do understand that is always why brands do men's first and that women come second because we are so much more complicated than they are.
But yeah, so we'll have 3 polos and 2 quarter zips here coming in June. And then, we'll look to expand on that as it grows. So I'm really excited.
So excited.
We've been building this thing for 2 years, and I'm really excited to finally be able to wear some of our actually like be able to wear our gear. So
I love that. I'm so excited. So one kind of fun thing I always like to ask people is it can be golf related, it can be anything else, but it's just sort of a random little question. Do you have any special hidden talents? Always make people think on this one.
Yeah, I can't like juggle. I'm not.
And if no special like hidden talents pop out, what's your best golf tip for our audience?
Oh man, I don't know that I have any special hidden talent.
There's got to be something magical inside of there.
My best hidden talent is I think I could word for word quote Caddyshack, the movie.
That's definitely a hidden talent. So there you go. That you can't say you don't have one. That's a pretty good one too. So I love it. Katy, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I love your brand. I am so glad that you came on the show to talk about what you're building, and I can't wait to continue to see it grow and watch you guys from a distance. Tell our audience how they can find you, where they can get in connection, and especially for all the ladies that listen, remind us of those dates of when the new ladies gear is coming out and just give me all the details.
Yeah, so all of our social media handles and our website are 35, so literally the numbers, X70 for 70. So 35X70 Golf Co. So GOLFCO. So www.35x70golfco.com. And then 3570 Golf Co. on Instagram and Facebook. And then the ladies' gear is expected to be here mid-June, and we'll get it turned around and launched as soon as we can. There will be plenty of footage of it on the social media feeds as well.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me. This is amazing. I love that this is in Kansas and that it's golf. And again, this conversation marries all of the things that I love together. And it's so amazing to meet you. And again, to be inspired by another entrepreneur who is just willing to make a leap that most people are not willing to do. There's so much in your heart for that. And I don't ever want you to forget, like, really how special and important that is and how hard it is to do. So, on those days where things do feel like, where's the next order coming from or what's happening, being able to push through and persevere is going to do so much for you guys. And I just can't wait to see it all unfold.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
Thank you.